Hi, I'm Ronald Miller. I will be interviewing Orville Maxon on October 4th, 2022 at the Bellevue College Veterans Center. Can you give us a little bit of background information on you, like where you were born and stuff?
Sure. I was born in Chamberlain, South Dakota on September 2nd, 1951. My parents moved to Iowa, a small town in northern Iowa, Eagle Grove, where I grew up, went to school, graduated high school there. Graduated in May of 1969, and in September of 1969 I found myself on the way to Lackland Air Force Base. 2 days after my 18th birthday, actually. And after basic training, well, my father became ill when I was in basic training. I had to go on emergency leave, and that messed up my career path. I was actually set to go into missile maintenance. I thought I wanted to be a aerospace engineer at that time, not realizing that you really had to know math to do that. It would have been a really poor career choice for me. But I wanted to go into missile maintenance because I figured that would be a good leg up for the career that I wanted. Well, as it turned out, because I went on emergency leave, that got me taken out of the usual cycle for assignment and training, and I wound up going direct duty assignment to Plattsburgh Air Force Base in New York, where I was assigned to be a vehicle operator, basically a bus driver most of the time. That was a SAC base at the time, B-52s and KC-135s, the 380th Strategic Bomb Wing. I was there for 2 years, met my lovely wife and married her there, and in 1971, in June, I went to Germany, to Rhein-Main Air Base at Frankfurt Airport. It was a good assignment. I liked it there. It was a MAC base. It wasn't a USAF base that you would normally find. It was actually a MAC base. It's where all the inbound personnel and outbound personnel came and departed through. All branches of service came through there on contract flights and military flights. I stayed there 2 years, and from there I went to Altus Air Force Base, Oklahoma. And while I was there, I was assigned, it was kind of an odd assignment. I was assigned to the MAC Loadmaster Training School on C-5s and C-141s. I was basically a training aide, driving forklifts and K-loaders and military vehicles onto an aircraft simulator, a loading floor simulator, so that the loadmasters could learn how to balance the weight, how to get stuff on there, guide trucks in, guide the forklift in without tearing up an airplane. I mean, it's pretty close quarters when you're backing up into a C-141. So it takes some practice to get to know how to do that. And then they also learn how to tie it down, how much tie down it took, and how to figure all that out. So after that, I went to Ellsworth Air Force Base in Rapid City, South Dakota. I was still in the motor pool then. That was a missile wing, Minuteman wing. And there was also a bomb wing there too, but primarily a missile wing. That was the host unit. And it was a good assignment, first of all, and being in the motor pool there was actually a pretty good job. There are a wide variety of things that had to be done there, like out in the missile field, thousands and thousands of acres, about a third of the state actually, was where the missile field was in general. security police would go, they'd take their four-wheel drive, 6-passenger pickups and go chase an antelope off across the prairie and stuff when they were bored and wreck them. And so somebody had to go out and pick that stuff up and bring it back to the base. Well, that was us. So, did a lot of work there, spent a lot of time out on the road. I actually became an instructor for tractor-trailer operations there. SAC started a program at that time for missile maintenance guys to learn how to drive semis better, because their equipment was transported to the field in semis, and they drove it. The warheads were taken out by semi, the missile itself was taken out by semi, maintenance vans were semis, and they had a bunch of incidents and accidents that had happened throughout the command, and it was kind of getting out of hand, so the SAC decided that there should be some formalized training for that, and I was selected as part of the cadre for that. That was a pretty good job. I enjoyed doing that. But I was given the opportunity to cross-train. The Air Force had a program called Palace Balance that allowed, well, this was at the first drawdown, the first serious drawdown of the Air Force. The Graham-Rudman proposal went into full effect, and bases were closing all over the place, and there were people out of jobs because they were canceling programs and stuff. So they were taking people in overage fields and cross-training them to shortage technical fields. I was selected for that. They gave me some possibilities to cross-train to, they being the Air Force, gave me some possibilities. There were like 5 jobs, I think, that they offered me, all of them in radar, in electronics. I wasn't that interested in that, and I was offered the opportunity to check on the personnel list and find out what other fields were short. So I found the job of imagery interpreter specialist. Well, what does that mean? It sounds important, but what is it? The Air Force and other services have all these collectors that go out and collect imagery of various types, photographic, might be radar, or might be infrared. Well, somebody has to look at all that and decide if it's important, and if it is, why is it, and report that on up the chain of command to our headquarters. So I cross-trained into that and went to Lowry for 9 months for training. And then following that, I went to Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. Great place, good job, I liked it. So of course they reassigned me 2 years later and sent me to Osan Air Force Base in Korea. I hated it every minute that I was there, but after I left I found out that I really didn't hate it that much. It was really a pretty good place to be, actually. For various reasons. I liked the people there. They were kind and respectful. You always knew that they wanted you there. That was very important. Because most places you were in, you felt like you were wanted maybe a third of the time if you were lucky. Then I went back to Langley, and after 3 years I got another assignment overseas to Kadena Air Force Base, Kadena Air Base rather, in Okinawa, Japan. At Kadena I worked directly with the SR-71. I was in the hangar next to the SR-71. In fact, the SR-71 that's out at the SAC Museum right now was in the hangar next door to me about 3/4 of the time that I was there. We lost one of them when I was there. It crashed between Guam and the Philippines. The crew made it out all right. The plane didn't do so well. They fished it out of the ocean and brought it back to Kadena and then sent it back to Beale for investigation. Then a few months later they killed the SR-71 program. I still had about 6 months left on my assignment there. And And my older son, was a senior in high school at that time. This was in January when they were reassigning us. And I didn't want to leave then if I could help it. And they also had a tactical intel group with RF-4s on the base, and they allowed me to come down there and work for 5 months until school let out, and then I had to come back to the States then. It's kind of I thought it was a kind of a funny story that SAC sent over a Manning crew to interview all the people in the detachment. The detachment was huge. It was bigger than most wings. We had like 370 people, something like that, to service anywhere from 1 to 3 aircraft. But there were all kinds of job skills that were unique to that airplane. So they sent over a Manning crew to talk to everybody and get them settled somewhere else. And they came in and talked to my shop, got my guys all together in a room about like this, and the Manning guy says, "Good news. We got assignments everywhere. There are people, they need people every place. You can go wherever you want, except you." Since it was a SAC unit, they didn't want to let a master sergeant go, and besides that, they were losing one to go to Germany, and I replaced him. I came here to Offutt in 1990. I worked in Intel Systems at that time, writing requirements for future systems. That was a pretty good job too. Another amusing to me part of that was the guy that I replaced, when he went to Germany, came back and replaced me when I retired. So that was in October 1993. And after that, I've worked around in various fields. I worked with computers and computer networks for a while. I came here to Bellevue University and worked for some time in the online learning business. I like that. I wish I was still doing that, actually. And I worked in the computer shop here too. When I was let go, the president of the university, I went to talk to her about it, and she advised me that here at the Vet Center, they were starting a new program in conjunction with Youth and Family Services to provide additional counseling and advice and help to veterans who were taking online classes, basically. So there were a group of us, there were about 6 of us, that were calling veterans and asking if everything was working okay and if they needed help with anything. Because, as you know, I think it's easier to talk to a veteran sometimes than it is to talk to a civilian. Not that there's anything wrong with civilians, but when you talk to civilians, you have to explain everything. You know, you use acronyms and phrases and say things that make absolutely no sense to somebody that's not been in the military world. It's just, I don't know. And there's a kind of an inherent level of trust, I think, too, talking to a vet.
Now, you said you joined the military in 1969,
That's correct,
a couple
yes.
weeks after high school.
Yep.
Was you drafted or did you volunteer?
I volunteered. I went in 2 days after I turned 18. I had to get my parents' signature to even sign up.
Okay. So,
the reason I did that was I wanted to earn a college education on the GI Bill. That was my plan at the time.
and do you have any brothers or sisters that joined the military or anything?
No. I had 2 brothers. Well, my older brother was in the Air National Guard in the late 50s. That's it. And my dad wasn't military either. Closest I had was an uncle who had been in the Air Force between World War II and Korea.
Was your time at Bellevue University in support of the University
The Air Force.
of the Air Force?
Were those the
Well-
online classes that they were taking?
Yeah, well, I mean, not exclusively, but yeah. A lot of the online students at the time were military. A lot of people don't know this, but Bellevue actually was the first location to have online learning using the Blackboard learning system. My boss at the time when I worked here, Dr. Beischel, was looking for an online learning, not online learning, for a computerized learning platform. She heard about this new product called Blackboard. It was new at the time. She went to Washington and talked to the president of the company, and she liked the product and liked the price, and she asked him, do you have online classes? And he kind of perked up and he said, do you want online classes? Well, we'd like to explore that. We'd like to do that. And they developed the online learning platform for Bellevue University. Bellevue was their first customer.
And what was your most memorable time about being in the military, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, I don't mind at all. That's kind of a hard question to answer, but probably memorable, probably in Korea, of all places. I learned there what the Air Force family actually meant. Around Thanksgiving time, I didn't want to be there, but neither did anybody else that was there. We were all in the same boat. None of us wanted to be away from our family, and so we had our own Thanksgiving meal. About 12 of us or so went to the NCO club and had a nice dinner, a couple drinks, maybe more than a couple, and just enjoyed the afternoon and had a nice evening after. It was nice to have that kind of camaraderie. People don't let their guards down that far under normal conditions.
And what was you consider probably one of the worst times or things? Like, could it be, as I know one of mine would be probably separated from my family, and
That's
just,
probably it, yeah.
so it'd be like Korea. Was your family able to go to Germany with you?
Well, they weren't sponsored. I brought them there at my own expense. Our older son was born there, actually, and they graduated from high school in Japan.
Okay.
But there were other things too. When I was at Altus, I did a lot of stuff in Altus that was outside the norm for people in my job. They expanded the Loadmaster training program there to include aerial delivery of product. In other words, people jumping out of perfectly good airplanes and delivering trucks and food and whatever by parachute. So they were training loadmasters to do that. Well, they needed help doing that. Normally it would be air freight helping, so we got to do that. I actually got to go on an airdrop one time, personnel drop. That was pretty cool. Watch them open doors and jump out. That was pretty crazy.
Can you tell me a little bit about your promotions? What how you felt about them, and where you was when you got your final promotion to Master Sergeant?
Well, I'm going to sound conceited when I talk about this, and I don't mean to. I scored very highly on the Air Force qualifying exams when I came in. I was qualified for every job in the Air Force except for medic, and that I had an 85 in medical, and being a medic required a 90. but I qualified for everything else. I test well. I have a good memory for stuff. It's kind of visual for me. So I can take a test and do well with it. When I first came in, they were promoting to Buck Sergeant to E4 under the WAPS program, the Weighted Airman Performance System. You had to test and do all the same stuff you did all the way up. And I made Buck under WAPS in 14 months. So it took me a little while to make staff. I made Buck in Germany. I made staff in Oklahoma, I believe. I made tech in South Dakota, and I made master in Virginia. It took me a while to make staff. My biggest problem in getting promoted was myself. I didn't know when to stop fighting battles that were unwinnable and not even really battles, and I didn't know when to keep my mouth shut either. I said things to different people that I probably should have kept to myself. And that doesn't, I believed firmly that you should be promoted on your work, and everything else really didn't matter.
Do you
25 or 30 years later, I finally figured out that it's everything else that actually makes the difference.
Right. Do you still keep in contact with any of the people that you,
Yeah.
other than people here at let's say at other bases?
Yeah. I have friends on Facebook from every base I was ever at, except Plattsburgh. I haven't found anybody. Well, I did have one at one time, but I don't know what happened to her. She's gone. So yeah, I do. As a matter of fact, last year I went and visited a guy that he was kind of my mentor when I was in South Dakota. Visited him out at Myrtle Beach.
So, you were in the military from '69 to '93,
Correct.
and then when you retired, did you get a civilian job working for the military, or
No,
just
I got a
outside?
contractor job working for the military.
Contractor, okay.
Yeah, for about 3 years.
Okay.
I worked in Building 500 on their local area network.
Is there anything you would like to tell future generations or family members about why you think the military was a good thing for you?
Oddly enough, I think the Air Force, well, the Air Force in particular, but I think the military in general, but the Air Force in particular, is a good, safe place to grow up. As long as you don't really, well, I had a term I was going to use, I won't use that. As long as you don't really stab yourself and do something really stupid, you can make a lot of mistakes and grow through the learning of those mistakes. Of course, a lot depends on where you are, it depends on your job, it depends on who you work for, on and on and on. But I guess I was lucky in those regards. I would recommend it to anyone who is adult enough to do it. My grandson-in-law, my granddaughter's husband, just graduated from Ranger training and is at a new assignment as a Ranger. I'm proud as hell of him. His father was a Ranger, his uncle was a Ranger. Runs in the family, I guess.
So out of all your training, which one do you feel was the hardest job to get into, or the training that took the most out of you, and also which one made you the happiest?
That's hard to say. Being in transportation and then being in Intel was like being in two completely different worlds. In transportation, there's a huge field, thousands of guys in it, and when you went somewhere else, you might know by accident, you might know maybe one person, maybe even two, when you got there. But Intel wasn't like that at all. Small field, very close field, both because of the job and just by virtue of the fact that you work closely together. And it didn't matter where you went, your reputation precedes you. You're going to know at least one person there, and probably several. And they may be people that thought highly of you before, and they may not. So it was a little more scary, especially as a cross trainee, as an E6 when I were cross trained, and expectations were actually really low for me. Here comes another weenie out of tech school, doesn't know anything. So when I first went to Langley, my first assignment, I studied, I worked really hard to learn everything there was to know about the particular part of the job that I was doing at that time.
Do you recall the day your service ended, or when you were at higher tenure, or
Yeah, higher tenure.
Higher tenure? Okay.
I'd still be in there, I think, if I'd let me stay. And I can't even believe that I say that. I was a rebel as a young lad. I was trouble. If there hadn't been a war on, I think I'd have got the boot before my first 2 years was up.
And how do you feel the service helped change you to the man you are now?
Oh yeah. Some of the most useful training for life, at least, was probably professional military education, leadership school, the NCO Academy, that kind of stuff. The theory of leadership, how to influence people to do what you need to have done. I was never authoritarian kind of person, really. I always tried to keep my voice as steady and calm as I possibly could, and tried to make people laugh as much as anything. But my theory on training other people was I wanted to train my replacement. When I left, I wanted a person there that could continue doing the job at least as well, and I use that word advisedly, as well as I did. Training was important to me.
Are you a part of any veteran organizations or anything like that?
I belong to the VFW. I haven't been active yet. I don't know exactly why not. I just have not. There's a chapter 3 blocks from my house. I guess I should go there. And here, I still come in here to the vet center and help on occasion, do what I can to help them do what they're trying to do. And I belong to it. Well, I don't necessarily. Some of the groups that are here allow me to play with them, and that's important to me too.
Have you told your family your story of you know, of your whole military career and your experiences overseas and,
Not in a linear kind of way, no. My wife knows because she was there for almost all of it. The kids, they paid attention sometimes they didn't. Actually, I'd like to have a copy of this when it's done, so to give them to look at when they want to.
okay. Is there anything you would like to add that we have not covered already?
Well, when I was in Oklahoma, I said that there's a lot of stuff I got wrapped up in that was kind of out of the ordinary. I didn't particularly like being there. I didn't particularly like the assignment, but there are some things I got involved in that I thought were worthwhile, and I still think are worthwhile. There was a time after I'd been there about a year, I had a part-time job. I was working at this gas station. I was by myself. And I got a call from somebody at work saying, you need to get to work right now. And I didn't exactly know what to do because I didn't have a key to the station to begin with. I didn't really know how to lock it up anyway. This was before cell phones, so I couldn't call my boss. I tried to call his house. He was gone. And I was panicking, wondering how I was going to get out of there. And it just happened that he drove by. And he came in. And I told him that I had to go. And was explaining as I was going out to the car that I didn't want me out of the base. I need to be there now. And when I got out there, along with the aerial delivery part of the training, they expanded the manning at the Loadmaster School to include combat controllers. Combat controllers are key to aerial delivery of material. And so they were out there that night. We were going to go over to the other side of the base to some storage bunkers and grab some palletized seats and load them on a C-5 and send it out to Travis Air Force Base. Well, we did that. We loaded a massive amount of seats on that plane. They sent it out to Travis. Well, it turned out that when they got to Travis, they took those seats and refitted them into C-5, a couple of C-5s to send to Saigon for Operation Baby Lift. So I got to participate in that. I feel strongly about that. I'm very proud of that moment. Another time that happened while I was there was a horrific earthquake in Managua, Nicaragua. I don't even remember how many people it killed. It's an unbelievable amount of people. And I got called in for that too. The 47th General Field Hospital from Fort Sill in Lawton, Oklahoma, was assigned to go down there and help, and we loaded up the planes for that. I was proud of that too. That was another good moment. There were some others too, that smaller things. There was a time when, if I hadn't been playing tennis with my next door neighbor, I would have got sent to Tel Aviv for the 6-day war. It just happened that they couldn't get a hold of him or me, and they wound up sending another guy. Just luck of the draw, I guess. I was lucky in my time in service. I never heard a weapon fired in anger. I'm fairly proud of that also. Not everyone would be, I don't think, but I am. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't do what I had to do. I just didn't get selected to have to go.
what would you like your family to know or remember from this story you've told us?
What would I like them to know? I think I'd like them to know that I took it a lot more seriously than I acted like I did. My wife used to get mad when I was at Ellsworth, because every time they had something happen at night and they needed somebody to come in and do it, first person they called was me, because I was dumb enough to go out and go into the cold winter night and do whatever it was that needed to be done, be out there all night long. I don't know, I felt it was my duty to do that kind of thing.
Is there anything else that you would like to add that we haven't covered here?
Education was very important to me in my own education and the people that work for me as well. Another thing that I think is, well, it's remarkable to me, is that when I was in Intel, I knew somebody that got commissioned with well, there's a half of an exception, I'll explain it, using every means of commissioning that there was other than a field promotion or a direct promotion where the general just points and says you're a major now. The exception was a guy who qualified to go to the Air Force Academy Prep School. He did go. He'd been there, he was there for about 2 months, and they discovered that he had a congenital bone problem in his knees that disqualified him physically from finishing. So he never got his commission, but he did go. I know a guy even that got promoted on Bootstrap. Bootstrap had been dead, I thought, for at least 10 years, but this particular guy had got into Bootstrap before it was canceled, and wound up getting his commission and made major. He just came and visited me just a month ago.
Anybody else?
Did you get a degree at all while you were in the Air Force?
After.
After, okay.
Yeah, I started going, I think this is kind of funny too. When we were in Kadena, my wife and her friend started taking night classes, and I was thinking, you're not getting a degree before I do, that ain't gonna happen. And so I started taking classes also. Finished up the time there and had about 6 classes done, and came here, and we started looking at Bellevue here and started taking classes. I was looking for a degree in computer science. They didn't offer that then. Well, they still don't, I don't think. But they did have computer information services. So I signed up for that, and when I was talking to the recruiter, she told me, well, if you just take 4 more classes, you can also get a degree in business administration. And 4 more classes, who cares? So I did that. So I had 2 bachelor's degrees. And then my wife started going to graduate school. She got 2 degrees also. She started going to graduate school mostly because it, I forget what the word is. You didn't have to pay your student loans right away. If you went to graduate school, they were put on hold. So she went to graduate school for that. And I had the same thought, well, you're not getting an advanced degree before I do. That's not going to happen. Same thing. I wanted to go into computer information systems. They didn't have that as a major in graduate school then. So I had to go into business administration with a concentration in computers. So I went to MBA school, and then they started up CIS degree. So, oh yeah, if you take another 6 classes, you can get both of them. So I wound up getting 2 master's degrees also. I was like collecting them for a while.
So is that how you got the job here at the...
Well, kind of, yeah, kind of, sort of. I worked for Kiewit Construction here in Omaha for a while, huge construction firm, $7 billion a year kind of money, and lost that job. And I was trying to get somebody to help me get a job here in their computer department, and someone that I knew, I saw her and her boss, the lady I was telling you about earlier, Dr. Beischel, and I said, "Hey, you guys, I've sent a million different things into you guys and you never answer anything." And that got Dr. Beischel's attention, and she wanted to talk to me, and she hired me virtually on the spot. I started here as a part-time evening help desk guy, and at $8 an hour, 20 hours a week. And 6 weeks later, I was the director of the department. Their director had gone on to do something else, and she felt I was the most qualified. There were a lot of people there that hated me for that, because they thought another guy should have been promoted. But I think I did a good job, personally.
What's the time, Ron?
We got 41.
Well, that's enough. If he wants to say anything more, then
Is there anything else you would like to say?
Like everybody, I have regrets on some stuff I did, but overall, I'm proud of my career. There's some things I might have done a little differently. I certainly would have taken things more seriously than I did, and hopefully I would have learned how to keep my mouth shut. I know I'd have done a lot better if I had learned that. But a lot of the operations I got involved in, I'm proud of them as well. Another operation that I got involved in was pre-planning for Desert Storm. I did some special missions while I was in Okinawa for that. And when I came here, before my clearance got transferred, I worked in a special planning cell. About a month out from the beginning of Desert Storm. I'm proud of all that.
Well, Orville, I want to thank you for your time.
Well, I want to thank you for listening.
Letting us talk and ask you some questions. We really appreciate your service
I
and your
appreciate
time.
yours as well.
Thank you.
Are you all military?
yes, I was in the Army.